Welcome to the Bilingual Summit, I Am Alive, a ceremonial 5-day event where we invite you to liberate your essence, celebrate your life, its cycles, your sexuality, and every breath and heartbeat. My name is Amalai, and together with Mar, we are the organizers of this summit. It is such an honor and a pleasure to talk today with Courtney. Courtney Stratton is a total embodiment practitioner, somatic experience practitioner specializing in spiritual abuse, sexuality, and eroticism. So welcome, Courtney. I'm so happy and so excited that you are with us today.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really honored to be part of your summit and to get to talk about my favorite things, aliveness.
Yes, so with that, a question we have is for you is like, what makes Courtney feel alive every day?
Yeah, that's a really amazing question, a really fun one to answer. One of the things I think, well, I know that makes me feel really alive is what happens when we're really present with what is happening right here, right now. So, for example, I was considering this interview with you and what we were going to talk about. And my aliveness really came on board. I got really excited. My energy started going up. My body started expanding, thinking about what might uncover itself, what we might discover just in the nature of being together and being present with what's asking to be birthed. And so, in line with that, the way I look at that is that I'm listening and tapping into deeply what messages my body is tuning into and sending forth, and finding out what wisdom is here for us to put into words, for us to feel together. That's why I'm really into embodiment and all things that have to do with the body as your path to spiritual awakening and for healing.
Wow. I believe that's a different way or a different perspective. And at the same time, there is a lot of richness in what you just said, because it is allowing us to flow instead of having a path, a predefined path of where is the next step, where I'm supposed to do. Instead of that, you are telling us that just pause and breathe and sense what is there and what really wants to come forth, what the universe is really telling you, or nature is telling you, like that's the next step. Because sometimes I believe we just go, we are so into the mind and, oh, this is the first step or the next step I'm supposed to take, and then we are not sensing what is around. So this interview, I find it fascinating, because that's what we are doing, is pretty much like see what is there, wants to come and wants to be shared today. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, I even noticed, just as you were reflecting that back to me, just feeling some of just like the fast, higher energy I had from like, oh my gosh, I'm going to talk about some stuff, to some settling, some deeper breath in my body, and just landing in my chair a little bit more, getting excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today, and allowing what's here to really be known.
Yes. So with that, what are you sensing? Like, what is in the field at this moment that it would be important for the people that are listening to us today, that is listening to you and is tuning into this field?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I did show up with some idea that we're going to be talking about embodiment, and we're going to be talking about aliveness. So there is a bit of, organization around how we're going to orient to this conversation. So there is some structure in that way. And then how that comes about is it's going to be its own vehicle.
Yes.
something I was just thinking about this morning was really about embodiment in general and how it's, I want to say, without being critical, that it's just kind of like a buzzword, right? That it's a very popular and hot topic right now.
Yes.
And um, and I still feel so much that embodiment is really approached still from a mental place. So I call myself a total embodiment practitioner, but I would say that I made that term up just because I do so many different things and I didn't really know how to label what I do. Like I have certificates and degrees and trainings and all that kind of stuff, but when I was really narrowing down what it is that I do, it's all comes back to embodiment and all the different pathways to get there. And one of the primary works that I do is called somatic experiencing. And so in that, I'm really acting as a guide and a support for people to drop into the wisdom in their body to resolve trauma. And it could be large traumas or small traumas, all different kinds of things that are present, and looking at the body as the guide for the wisdom. What I run into a lot is that I think there's this desire, this ache, this longing inside people for being able to tap into the body. We are very identified with our minds, at least in Western culture, and at least in American culture where I am, or North American culture, that there's a very powerful identification with the mind. And so it can feel really hard, almost like you're learning a new language, to be able to really drop in to the body in the moment.
Yes.
And it takes patience. So our minds sometimes are like, I want to be done with this. I want this to filter through. I understand something mentally, but if we understand it mentally, then why hasn't it changed? If the mind is the path, then why didn't it change? And that's the question I'm always asking. And then, go ahead. Did you have something?
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
Yeah. And so the question I'm always asking is, well, you're a really smart person. You've clearly thought this out. Why don't you feel better? Why isn't this resolving? Why isn't there clarity? And I really feel that the answer is because we need to really drop into the body, and simply figuring it out in the mind isn't quite enough. And so I think a lot of existential questions can even be answered by dropping into the body and waiting. And sometimes we have to wait a little while, and we have to attune and train our ear to listen in a different way and to unlock the messages and to like decode them, those little like decoder rings where you have to figure out what is happening here. And it's like we have to learn this. Or relearn it or unlearn the other way that we've been doing it, to really tap into the wisdom of what is here. And the things that we might not like about ourselves are actually chock full of wisdom.
Yes. Everything that you mentioned and said resonates totally with me. I also believe in what I've seen with the people that I interact and the clients also that I've been with me. It's sometimes we understand, but it's just in this upper level. We are great explaining it. It's as we totally get the concept and everything, but then when we are bringing it down to our practice, our behaviors are not changing, our our acts are not changing. So that's when it comes, it hasn't sink in totally in every cell. It is in the mental body, but then it hasn't sink in the body itself. So it's very important, and also the understanding that we get when this knowing or this information comes and it kind of goes through and penetrate every cell of ourselves. It's kind of, oh wow, it's a realization, it's an aha. It's like all the body trembles, like oh, it's like you're listening to music. Is okay, I get it. And then
Mm-hmm.
there is a shift. But yes, it's so important to move the body as we are getting new information, so it doesn't stay only in the mental. And I always share this example, Courtney, because I think it goes with what you just mentioned, is like, we cannot say that McDonald's is a bad thing if we haven't tasted. We cannot say anything is bad or give an opinion just because we conceptually think about something or we learn about something when we haven't experienced. So personally, for me, in my practice is I need to experience to be able to share from experience. I can be spectacular sharing concepts. And maybe I would have a lot of wisdom, because there is people that has a lot of wisdom, and that's what they share. But then when you experience it, when you live things through, and allow yourself to go through the whole process, is a very different sharing. And every person needs to live it. Like, we can share what we experience, but the other person needs to experience it so they can tell and give their own opinions. So it's so important, the body itself.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to is like the direct experience, the felt sense of the truth of something when it comes out of a mental concept or a mental construct and drops down into a greater integrated knowing.
Yes.
Like gnosis, that direct experience, that knowing of something as it is in its essence.
Yes. And when we allow ourselves to observe it, we acquire that wisdom. Like, the body start opening itself to that wisdom, like a gateway. So, like, what is the role in this thing that you do, in this total embodiment practitioner or a practice that you do? Is what is the role of the body? What would you say is the role of the body?
Yeah, I think the body is the wisdom keeper. And how I really look at dropping into the body is that if we really wait and we really tune in, and I can give an example of this so it will become more clear, but if we really wait and we really tune in, something will be revealed that we couldn't conceptualize. And it has its own language. And it takes quite a while sometimes for people to be able to know what that language is. But, let's say someone has a conundrum about something and they're really, I can speak about something that happened recently for me working with someone, is that they had an experience and it was very painful. And the experience brought up a bunch of other things. And so to tap into the response that happened in the body was cluttered with so many other meanings attached to it. So just the essence of the physiology of what the reaction in the body was couldn't be just experienced in its purity. It was linked in, and what I mean by purity is just its essence of just what it is. Like, this is a fight response, or this is a flight response. My heart rate is high. My hands are tingling. My ears are buzzing, these kind of things. Suddenly it's like, oh, this means this and this means that. And the mind can take us off track, which I think is a bit of a strategy to protect ourselves from the intensity of the somatic experience of what is happening in the soma, in the body. Yeah. And so as we were acknowledging that and just peeling away, okay, so as you're feeling this, you're connecting it to this memory. See if we can just let that memory go to the side and keep dropping down. And as they were attuning more and more just to the sensation of it, the realization came. The witnessing of the power of the moment, of what needed to be pulled apart, happened. So what I'm really experiencing is okay. I am letting my body finish this process. And as my body finishes this process, this energy that was being held and managed is now integrated. And there was an expansion of the cells and a real clarity about the scenario, a clarity about the experience without it being connected to all of these other things, just having an essence moment. And that's what I think, you could never have made that up. Like it had to come out of that person's body. They had to track the sensation. They had to allow it to expand. It gave a visual for them, and it helped them pull pieces apart and get really clear. And that really can only happen through a waiting and an attunement and a watching and a tracking of the sensation until it finished what it started, because the body likes to finish what it starts.
Yes. Wow. As you share, I kind of sense that expansion. And it is interesting on how the mind intervenes. And as you mentioned, sometimes it just wants to protect us. It has been, the role of the mind has been, okay, let's do this and let's protect. And we gave that role in certain way to the mind, and we didn't took our own authority. So the mind learned that, and that's how it works. And what you just mentioned also is how we associate with our feelings, experiences, ideas, judgments. And when we have those things, they intervene, and there is not a purity of the emotion or what we are sensing. And I had like an experience once that I was also, I wanted to express something, but through sounds. Someone was asking me something, but what came through me was sounds. But there was this judgment of doing a ridicule, like it was stupid what I was going to say. Then I felt how it was, my muscles were trembling, and I was like, okay, there is something, but I have some constructs, and I am not allowing this to come out. So I need to see what is that is kind of holding the experience of the emotions to come out in a free way. So it's I think that's a new way to start detaching and say, yes, allow the experience, don't judge, free the experience. And when we separate and we don't kind of put a judgment or something, then it's better for our body, for us, for our mind. And there is more liberation, I believe.
Yes, you're talking about something really important. So the sound that your body wanted to make, that would be a pathway in my experience, right? As you're talking about something and you feel a sound that wants to come out, and the sound itself is just a sound, but then we attach, oh, I feel silly, or oh, I'm not doing this right, or whatever the judgment is. So then we have the pure whatever thing is coming out, but we're attaching how we feel or how we think about what that is. And that, in my opinion, is what hijacks us from dropping down to the core of what's there and what needs to be expressed. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be mentally understood, right? And it's not that we want to kick the mind out. The mind is also important. And the mind can be a tremendous resource of having a meaning come online that's really powerful. But oftentimes we're trying to analyze and impose meaning instead of following the body and letting the meaning arise organically. So maybe the sound is like, you know, and then you go, oh, wow, you can really get in like in contact with this whatever animal part of you that felt protective and defensive. And once that can move, if you don't analyze it and just let it move through your system, then there's freedom, because that thing that got started another time, where that way you wanted to protect yourself didn't get finished. So it keeps getting activated and keeps trying to find a way out, and keeps trying to find relief, whatever it is. And if we can allow that, then sometimes it's like, oh, wow, after I did that growl, my body settled down, and now I feel like I could maybe go over and have a conversation with that person about what it was. But first I had to let myself feel all my animal growling protection. And now that that's integrated through, something else might come online that I might be able to do. Because obviously, in most social scenarios, it's not okay to go, "Rah." You know, it's someone if it you off, right? I mean, it might be kind of fun. That's how kindergartners do it. But, you know,
yes, yes,
in
yes,
some
yes.
safe relationships, we might be able to. But, you know, socially, if we let that feeling go through, then we might be able to show up with something else. But also, sometimes that sense in your body that's a no to something. That's a, ooh, I feel protective, and that is me saying no. And what we do a lot is, and this popped into my mind earlier when you were speaking, so many times my clients will say, there was something in my body and I just was feeling weird about it, but logically it couldn't make sense. And that is where I feel that we've become disconnected, where we aren't encouraged in a lot of ways. I mean, that's changing, which is very exciting to me. But we're not encouraged to follow our bodies. People are like, well, that's not logical. You know, that doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing that? I don't know, but I just feel like that's a no for me. Something in me is tight, or I have an unsettled feeling in my stomach. But then it's like, why not? This looks good, or this person's nice, or whatever it is, or a bunch of other things that we can also get into in terms of the social engagement system, where we're supposed to be nice. So it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be nice, when really I need to tell you to get away from me because something is wrong here. And so there is a lot of messaging from the body. Like, our body is reacting before our mind even comes online. The body's already picked it up. It's like a big antenna. Yes. And we've just numbed it or numbed out to really being able to live from it, to be in it, to know. And we doubt and second guess ourselves. And then a lot of the trauma resolution work I do is people going, oh, I felt something and I didn't follow that. And so as we do this processing, they get more and more attuned to how their system is saying yes or no to things, or going toward or moving away from things.
Yes. And that's the beauty. It's possible. It's possible to do and to get the body to start talking to us, because and I mentioned everything for me comes through experience. I went through this once because I came from I study the profession I study is system engineering, so it's a very logical. Even though I started in my childhood like practicing a lot of dance, of movement and theater and all those things, then there was a point that it switched totally, and it was in the logical and how you need to behave, and also the school I studied was it was, they call it like military school kind of type things. So it kind of cuts you from where you come to this is how you behave, this is the way you move, and todo is like very square. And then going back to the body and start listening and knowing that the body is saying yes to something, even your mind is not on board yet, because it's like, okay, what's going on here? It doesn't make sense, but the body is saying, you are going here, you are staying here, you are taking this direction. And when we start following the body, we understand, oh, wow, yes, it has like, yeah, I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to do this. And it's the gifts that we found is amazing. So the question is like, how can we start achieving that? Like, what would be the first step that you would recommend, Courtney, to get into the body wisdom?
Yeah, I think I would start. Okay, first I want to say something. If a lot of really painful things have happened to our bodies, if we've been violated or attacked or abused and those kind of things, it can feel very scary to drop into the body. And so that's why I approach this with, like, I'm not judging or condemning a living in the mind space. I'm saying we're missing out on a lot, and I want to invite the body in. And so in that case, I think moving in small steps toward touching into the body is the way to go. You know, in the somatic experiencing work, we use a term called titration, and that's like when you apply just a little bit of something and see the effect. And what I've found through this, it feels very opposite to my upbringing, which is like bigger, better, faster, stronger now, you know, let's have a catharsis if something is happening, you know, we want a big experience.
Yeah.
I really love this idea, and it feels it, and it really matches up with embodiment of coming in trying things in little small doses and then testing the effect. Talk about direct experience, right? Of what happens with this. So one thing I think is a nice entry point is to orient toward something that feels pleasant or neutral. So if you've never contacted your body really, or never really listened to your body, sometimes people come to me and I ask them, you know, what are you feeling? They're like, oh, I don't know. They look at me like I have 75 heads, you know, like, I don't know. I don't feel anything. They're not, either a lot has happened, so they've had to disconnect that sense, or they just don't know how to do it. They've been in scenarios where they've had to, what I call override. They've had to override what's happening in the body so much that it's like, oh, wow, the volume is completely turned off. We don't want to crank it up to 11, right? We want to touch it just a little bit. So one of the really cool exercises that I learned from a teacher named Twig Wheeler is called like the 3, 3, and 3. And so you look out into your environment and you just let your eyes sort of float around, and you notice 3 things that are pleasant to your eye or neutral to your eye. And then when you look at that, you come back and see, how does my body feel after I have looked in the room and seen 3 pleasant things? How does that register in my body? Maybe I feel some lightness. Maybe I feel some warmth in my chest. Sometimes we don't even have the language for it. So it's great to get like what are some words of sensation, like some sensation language. Maybe an image pops into your mind, like, oh, when I look at that little stuffy over there, I remember myself on a slide when I was 5, and now I feel myself smiling and there's a twinkle in my eye, something like that. So if we're not used to tuning in, it's nice to go in on something neutral or positive and start there. That can be a little bit easier. And then start to deepen that. Start to expand that practice of 3 things out there, then 3 things in the body, and then 3 things out again. And maybe even really looking around so that your head starts to really orient to your environment and come back. How do I feel looking around again? So those kind of starting with something simple, easy, and more on the pleasant side might be a good pathway in. But also I want to say, sometimes it's really hard for people to allow themselves to feel pleasure. And that we actually have to build capacity for feeling pleasure. Yeah. Because again, pleasure is linked with a bunch of other things, like, uh-oh, that was pleasurable. Oh, that's bad. Yeah. Oh, I shouldn't. Because in life, we get trained out of things, like you mentioned military school or a military type school. I was in the military as well. And there was not space for me. I mean, especially when I was doing really rigorous physical training, I could not, or like having to stay up for really long hours. I was like, body, you're going to do this. You know, I wasn't like living in tune with myself. So I have a ton of compassion for all of that, because I mean, it's not that I've perfected embodiment. It's just I'm dedicated to it and I'm hopelessly devoted to it. And it's what makes me feel really alive.
Yeah.
And so moving slowly toward it is really great. And even noticing what happens in your mind when you're moving slowly towards something. Right? You say, oh, this should be faster. I should be getting more, and all of that. And watching that, it can be a really great exercise in like finding some more out about your system.
Yes. And with that, what is coming to me at this moment, the information that is coming is like, when I was able to start tuning with my body as well, because my mindset was like very strong. Whatever I put it on my focus, I was getting it. So I was like super focused, and I was like a great manifestor, as many people would say. But then I was very rigid. So when I started inviting my body in and I start connecting with it again, then that was the path also to awaken my femininity, my sexuality, my I would say my yin energy, and I started sensing another polarity, I would say the other side. So it totally shifted so many things within myself. I would say now I in this integration among both energies, not one or the other, but I needed to experience the full yin, the full flow of things, and my body totally. And so it's a way to open this feminine side that has been sometimes put aside. So the body connects, I believe. I don't know what is your view, Courtney, but it connects with that part, with the other part of ourselves, and it do the same with the men, right? Because I think we have dedicated so much just in one type of energy that we forgot that we have the other part, and we sometimes haven't explored like all the richness of the other energy, like the feminine energy.
Yeah, I think how I look at the feminine energy is with this aliveness lens in the way of like responding to what's right here, right now. Like as you were talking, I was really like when you said rigidity, I could feel my body going up tight, and then you said something else about contacting a different way of being, and there was some more flow, there was some more spaciousness, and
Yes.
it's not that I don't think structure is important. I think structure is incredibly important, but rigidity is where we lose that aliveness. It's like we're manufacturing something as is. And I think that no matter what your gender, you have access to all the different kinds of energies. I think we've been more geared toward productivity, toward outcome, toward results, toward some of the things that can go in a direction that feels a little more heavy and toxic for me, and not free, not sovereign, not inner authority driven, as you mentioned earlier. And the way I'm thinking about it right now, as you're talking about it, embodiment is finding that inner authority, like really listening, not to what we think something is supposed to be externally, but what is actually true for this system. That I have medicine for me that's perfect for me, and you have medicine for you that's perfect for you. So to be super prescriptive, that's opposite for me of embodiment. Not that sometimes prescriptions don't work, but in embodiment, I love the idea of the medicine arising out of the system. That's what the connection with the field is. That's the connection of what's present right now, because the medicine might look really, really strange. You know, it might be something that you would think that's a weird thing that would be helpful for someone, but it actually is. Like I remember a client that I had who had been really tied up to a bunch of tubes in the hospital. And we were looking for, like really pulling out the story and letting things complete. And one of the things she loved was like she was fascinated by medical equipment. And like that was a positive thing for her. That was really cool. Whereas someone else like that I processed with, they had tubes and they're like, oh my God, the other person was just so grateful for these machines that kept them alive and all the tubes. And it was super fascinating and cool. And that was remembering that gave them so much power and had them feel so supported. Where someone else, that experience was like death. Like it was stuck in their body. They felt trapped. They were frozen from that experience, and remembering it, they could barely speak about it. So what is actually nutritive to the system, what is hurtful to the system is super individualized.
Yes.
And you know, that's really the essence, I think, also of trauma. It's not what happened, it's like how the system processed what happened. So the way out is unique, or the way through is unique for everyone. And that's the space where I think the body knows best.
Yes, yes, yes. And that's the uniqueness that when we talk, yes, we are all the same. We have the same DNA, but at the same time, we are very unique because we'll process from a different space, from different experiences.
Yes.
And that's the beauty, that everybody has their own uniqueness. They're not two alike, like the same drop. There is none. So yeah, that's very rich, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. So with this, what would you say then that would be the benefits? Like once we start and we decide to take this a step to get to know our body, how it responds and what is holding it, what are the benefits that you've seen so far?
Ooh, that is such a great question. Oh my God, I love that. Yeah. Okay, I just got really excited thinking about that. I mean, one of the things that I think is to feel so in tune with yourself, feel aligned with how you're moving about in the world and how you're feeling inside. I haven't perfected that yet, but you know, I'm working on coming toward this space of what that alignment feels like. It's like, it's the most natural. I mean, I've had, you know, very powerful moments of it, and I'm working with it, but wow, it's just feeling like you're in charge of yourself and you're in charge of your world, and that it brings a confidence in your decision making. It brings a self-trust, which I think if you've experienced any trauma and you come into that comes online a lot, of like not feeling like you can trust, and that's a frightening feeling. And to come back into a place of, oh, I have chills all over my body, of trusting yourself, trusting your instinct, trusting that you know how to respond, trusting that you can read yourself, that even if something does happen to you, you know how to process it, you know how to be with yourself, you know how to go toward what is nutritive to you. I don't really know what's better than that.
Yes. Yes.
That is aliveness. Yes. I can respond to what's right here, right now in the world.
Yes.
I have that ability to respond.
There is that trust, and I feel like in another word, I would say, then it becomes the knowing. Mm-hmm. Like, and it gives you this, like, the rootness, like we felt more grounded, like it's like our feet become like big roots, and we are walking with this authority, but inner authority of our life. And it starts with the trust, because as you mentioned, it just brought so many things. Yes, I didn't trust about my reactions, if what is best for me, but because I didn't know what my body was saying. But once I allow my body to tell me, I decided to trust my body more than my mind. In fact, if I need to take decisions, of course, the mind, I believe it's amazing, but then my body knows better. And when I go into that, and I took a lot of decisions based on in my body, because my body was like, boom, very strong, very grounded, very solid, because it's a solid, but it's not rigidity. It's solid.
Yes.
And it says, yes, that's it. I don't get it, but I will follow my body in full trust.
Right. It's like a little breeze isn't going to blow you over. Like you have some robustness to you that you can be with what is here right now.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, there is a groundedness, a centeredness, and a way that there's a moving not from what I think I should be doing, but what I know I need to be doing.
Yes. And it's interesting because, yes, it comes with a lot of entanglement of constructs, mind constructs that we created. The more those are entangled, then I feel more free. But everything returns, okay, what my body's saying. Right. What is I'm not listening? It took me some time to process. Like I don't know if you've seen, but sometimes it's like, okay, something is bothering me, but I feel I don't like to be here. I don't want to talk more with this person. I don't have any bad feeling for the person. If we want to put a tag of bad, is just because there is a lot of judgment. If we want to pause maybe a relation with somebody, and it says, at this moment, I don't know what's it, right, but I need to take a step back and be with myself. So, and it takes sometimes to digest or decode, as you mentioned, decode what is it. And then 2 days later, okay, it was this word with this gesture, this behavior that my body immediately has reacted because it doesn't resonate with it, and is not tolerating it. So it brings that wisdom. And sometimes it takes time until we start getting into the alignment, and so information comes faster and faster. So we just need to walk one step at a time and just keep listening to the body. I get surprises always from the body. So I totally recommend to everybody. It's like, this is a time to go back to the body for all of us.
Yes, and you're saying something really amazing and powerful, and I'm so glad that it came to this point too, is that what you're talking about is also a trust in your own process, that you felt something, you're like, I don't know what that is yet, but something is off, and I'll just keep listening. And it might take 2 days, but I'll just keep listening. And as I'm listening and as I'm watching, then the wisdom starts to come out. And so that's, I think, the empowering part, the really potent, juicy part of the embodiment, is that you begin to trust that I can listen and I can find out, I can know. And my body holds that. No one else has to tell me.
Yeah.
That is within me. And I will get there. It might be in 2 days, but I will get there. And sometimes it does happen so much faster, right? And also, it's available even if it takes a little bit longer, you know? And that's to me the really amazing and juicy part about working through embodiment that way. Yeah.
Yes. I have experiences that it took me like a full week, that I needed to be in a whole eremit place, like totally closing a lot of things, because there were so many things happening within myself. And I see to people also, it's like, experience yourself, give time. And because sometimes we struggle and we want to give a meaning, we want to get rid of it. We don't want to feel it anymore. So we fight. And I always say, when you fight, you will find always like a similar strength against with what you are fighting. So at the end, you are just fighting and you are in this dance and you are not doing anything, instead of just allow the emotions to be there without judgment. It's not easy, but then when you finish the process, it shifts your life. It's going to shift all the different experiences. So it's just go through the process instead of trying to change it. Because we tend to do that. I've done it also so many times. We want just, okay, I want to shift, but the more I try to escape from it, I think it takes longer, or it's just my mind fighting with it. But the more I just go through it, it's like, okay, it's always good what I find after.
Yeah, mwah to that.
Yes. So that's beautiful. What you just said is honor the process of the others. So that's important. Honor your own process.
And I'm thinking too, as another piece, you mentioned the military, and I'm thinking, you know, really wanting to connect the spiritual component here too, that I feel is
Yes.
really important, is that,
Yes.
and this isn't always the case, but in a lot of religious structures, there's always something outside of you that is telling you how you're supposed to conduct yourself, or you know, this like code of ethics or morals, or even your intermediary between you and the divine, or whatever you call the
Yes.
great mystery, whatever your spiritual connection is. And in an embodied approach to spirituality, it's like your body is the conduit. Your body is the source of connection. You know, you're incarnate, and so that's your spirit has come into a body, or however you want to look at that, and this is the interface. This body is the interface with the
Yes.
world, both in and out. And so it's a lot of traditions, especially when like Descartes, and I'm not going to blame it all on Descartes. There's a whole bunch of other things, but it's been, you know, a lot of in the research that I've done in my program, like this thing called Cartesian dualism. It's like the body and mind are separate. Then the body's this like toxic thing that needs to be purified and cleansed and overridden, and it has base and animal desires, and really that's the space where we've gotten super disconnected and lost our power, because you can really control someone by giving them an external thing that they have to fit inside, and you put yourself in pretzels to try to fit in this thing that doesn't work. And again, it's not the right medicine all the time. So sometimes it's great medicine for people, and sometimes it's really not. But when we're not allowed to tune in to what's neck down, or to allow that to also be informing our experience, we're missing a major component in our spiritual sovereignty, in our connection with the divine, or whatever word that you choose, that you're what's sacred to you.
Yes. Yes, because at the end you experience heaven on earth, what we were mentioning at some point, but is that is spirituality, or that experience is coming into this body, and this body will experience that in the form, in this material, and it's also, as you mentioned, the antenna. So it's receiving the messages, it's receiving the information, is the oracle, I would call it, is the portal or the gateway, like all the beautiful words. When we start shifting that association, that is not the mind, yes, it comes, but it comes through the body. Always, it cannot escape the body. It comes through the body. The information we receive, yes, is the mind, but it comes through the body. Always is the conduit. It comes, any message comes through the body. The body is the final manifestation of our spirituality in different ways. So yeah, that's what you said. Yes, brought that that realization about what the body becomes, and it's inviting the body into the experience.
Yeah, and in that look, in that approach, the body is so sacred.
Yes.
And everything really becomes sacralized then in that way, you know. And as we're finding our connection to our body as a conduit, the natural then next thing is to notice nature, and to feel the attunement with nature and sacralizing nature. And it just keeps going into this expanded way of treating yourself as a sacred being, and that around you as sacred as well.
Yes.
So
yes. Yes, it's beautiful. So, well, here I would like to ask you or invite you if there is any practice or 5 minutes guidance that you want to share with the people that are listening to you, that you would say, okay, you can start this 5 minutes practice. Is there something that you feel to share with the audience?
Yeah. So what I would ask, maybe we could just try even the little thing I mentioned in the beginning.
Okay.
And but I want to give something to take away too.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just thinking for just a moment here. What feels really alive? Okay. What I love, this is one of the great ways to develop embodiment, is to notice impact of an experience. So it takes awareness, it takes a pausing, it takes a slowing down, even just for a moment. So the practice that I would recommend for embodiment is just start like this. How do I feel right now? And one way to start, if you don't know how to orient to your body, is a body scan. Starting from one direction, starting at the head or starting at the feet, and systematically moving up and just noticing, how do I feel right now? And maybe you don't have 5 minutes to really go all the way through the whole body, but get a sense. Am I leaned forward? Am I relaxed back? Am I spacey? Am I hyper-focused? You know, there are some general things you can kind of notice about yourself. Am I buzzing? What is my breath like? Just to take a snapshot of yourself. Then have an experience, whatever it is. Lunch with a friend, a yoga class, a conversation, a bite of chocolate, whatever it is. And then notice the way it's impacted you after. And you take a note. That's your snapshot, like, oh wow, I was like this, and then now I'm like this. Look at the impact. And in those, which sound so super basic and simple, but that is really the pathway in, and that's the presencing of yourself. What did I just do, and how did that impact me?
Wow.
Then that's how we find out, do I like this or do I not? Do I want this or do I not? Or, wow, I'm thinking about going to this thing and my stomach's in a major knot. I'm just going to see, wow, I have a major knot in my stomach. And there, of course, are really different ways of working with this. This is just one basic small technique I'm giving you. And then do the thing and then notice. And that's how we start to see how our body responds. Start to see our messages sent to us. And it's very, very simple.
Wow. Yes.
How has something impacted? So I have a yoga school, and in my classes, and I train teachers, and in that I'm constantly at the space of the beginning of the class, notice how you feel. And then at the end of class, knowing how you feel. So you can really see how things impacted you. That's a large overarching thing. But I'll even do it inside poses. And that's a very important embodiment experience, because oftentimes we're on autopilot. Our mind is somewhere else, and we're not coming down into ourselves and going, what is this? How does this impact me? And so this is a really simple exercise, but it's potent.
Yes. And also it's bringing that pause that you mentioned, because sometimes, as you mentioned, as you said, is we are running one thing to the other, and it's allow yourself to have 3 minutes and listen. Just give a space to yourself and to your body to feel it. It will realign itself. You will notice things. And I think it's very important, because sometimes we just go fast and the body has a different pace, and needs some time also by itself. So
yeah, and if it's not something that we know how to do or we don't remember to do, we can help ourselves out by doing setting up an alarm or something, and just going, okay, how are you feeling right now? And it can be a little tiny, it can be so short. It could be a few seconds, just, wow, how do I feel right now? Like, for example, I'm doing this with me and you for this conversation, and how I felt in the beginning and how I feel now, it's very different. Yes. I was more buzzy. I was like up, like, oh my gosh. And then now it's like, oh, I'm all heavy in my seat and my body feels spread out, and my breath is so much slower and deeper, and I feel softer, so I can tell it that I liked this conversation.
That's great. And that's awesome. So I enjoy so much. It's amazing how fast time go.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So is there something else you want to share with the people, or what would you be the advice or that you want to share?
Well, thank you all for listening to get to this place in the interview. So I really appreciate that. I think I would advise people to give themselves at least 1 minute a day where they place their hands on their body somewhere. Like right now, I've got both my hands right on my chest center. That just arose naturally. But to pause at least for 1 minute and place the hands on the body and just notice, like really see, where do my hands want to be right now, and offer that support to the body. And notice what that small practice does for how you engage with yourself, how you engage with the next thing that you need to do. And that's one piece that I would invite.
I love it. I just do it while you were suggesting and advising it. My hands went directly to my uterus. It was just there. It was like, okay, I feel good now. Oh, that feels good. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Really, I am so into the small, simple practices making the hugest impact.
Yes. And 1 minute is easy to get. It's very practical. So, Courtney, thank you so much for this time, for everything you share with us, because I always say that it goes beyond the words, beyond what has been discussed. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And for the people that are listening, you will have all the information from Courtney in her bio page. So you can visit her website, you can get to know her more, and also, of course, look for her sessions and everything she offers. I enjoy so much talking. Thank you so much, Courtney.
Me too. It was really wonderful to be here. Thank you for this conversation.
Okay.
Okay.